Just on data, I yesterday attended the Public Accounts Committee examination of UKRI, and you won't be surprised to know I know that data, which is something we've been very focused on, the data on how much private investment is coming in off the back of the 20 and which departments and geographically is completely key. I know you understand that. Can I just on that ask, you said something very interesting the other day. You may not be aware how interesting. I've learned, when I was in your role, I discovered everything you say becomes very interesting to those who are listening, about the importance in this global race for science and technology, sovereignty and competition, to think in three buckets. The blue sky, the national strategic sovereign mission, whether it's semiconductors or quantum encryption, and then thirdly, the industrial growth piece. And I just wanted to encourage you just to share your thoughts on how, as the CSR lands, and what will that mean for the 20-odd billion across government, for the DSIT budget and the UKRI budget? It's an important point, which, by the way, I completely agree with. I just wonder what you think it'll mean for the system.
The first thing is those three buckets I want to see used for all of the R&D spend across government. So we've got a clear idea what's happening right the way across. At the moment, if we look at UKRI, it's about 50% in the first bucket, 20 or so in the second, and 30 or so in the third. So that's the historic view. I'm not 100% comfortable that those data are completely accurate because it depends on definitions. What I want to do for the spending review for tomorrow is to, when we do our allocations, think very hard about what proportions we want. We're not going to be able to shift it instantly, but we do need to get to a position where we're clear about why we've got the amounts we've got in each of those buckets, and also clear about the return on investment expected. So the return on investment for accuracy-driven research is potentially huge, but potentially unknown in terms of when it occurs. So it's pointless sort of asking, what's the impact in the next 5 years? Because the honest answer is you don't know for most of that. But you do know that if we get it right, in 20 or 30 years' time, that's going to be absolutely crucial for the UK. And it's right that public money goes to a major extent in that bucket, because that's the thing that nobody else is going to fund. For the second bucket and the third bucket, we should have at least a 3-to-1 private to public, and we should expect very significant returns on investment. And I want to get to a position of transparency of how much we're putting in each bucket and why, because I think that's a choice, and a way of measuring the return and the private sector crowding in each of those buckets. I think that will help all of us understand what we're achieving with the money we've got. And after all, it's a large sum of money.
I hear to that. You won't be surprised to know, I don't think, that yesterday at the Public Accounts Committee, UKRI, when I asked the same question, said, we do it all. And I wanted just to ask you, it's an exciting moment, new minister, new Perm Sec at DSIT, new CEO of UKRI, new CEO of Innovate. It's an unusual moment to align everyone around these priorities. How confident are you that within UKRI, which has come a long way in the digitalisation and modernisation, that they're gripping that challenge of the three different pillars? Because traditionally they've been an academic funding body, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I've got total confidence that Ian Chapman is going to grip it completely and gets it. They've made some movements towards doing this. It's not easy. And you're right, it emerged from a very academic funding system to one which is becoming more focused on these three things. And the reason that I want to have those three things is not because I believe they are absolutely rigid buckets where there's no movement between them, but because I think it conceptually helps us to understand whether we've got the funding envelope properly allocated.
Yeah. Last question just on this thread, here to that. In life sciences, which you and I both know well, of course, the budget, the biggest single budget across the ecosystem is NIHR, which is a Department of Health budget. When I was Minister for Life Science, I had responsibility for it. Since then, the MRC budget has dropped, actually, because of the UKRI top slice to about 600 or 700 million. NIHR is now nearly 2 billion, I think, a year. It's a significant sum. Can I ask, how do you see that NIHR DH budgetary function coming in under this very powerful and compelling three-pillar model?
Well, I think I don't know exactly their budget. It's 1 point something.
I might have exaggerated a bit,
but it's not quite as high as 2. But and I've already had the discussion with them that I'd like them to use the same structure. Now, of course, I can't force everyone to use the same structure, but I think it is one that we want to see. And I would guess that if you looked at the NIHR budget, you'd see much more in bucket 2, because that's what a lot of it does. It's sort of more on the sort of what are the things the health system needs. You'll see some in bucket 3 for sure, because some of the companies get started there, and you'd see some in bucket 1, but I suspect bucket 2 would be their predominant funding bucket.
Yeah.
And the advantage of that is then we can look at the whole system and say, are we covering all of the things we mean to be covering appropriately?
Thanks. I suppose my question is really governance. How I was lucky enough to be Minister for Department of Health for NIHR and MRC. How, in this architecture, is it through the Science and Technology cabinets? What's the mechanism for this laudable focus, strategic focus, to apply to a department that you're not a minister in?
Well, DCIT has a cross-government accountability for science, and so it's perfectly legitimate to be dealing with all of these things, and there is, as you know, a cabinet committee on science and tech.